You're tuned into 9 to 5 Work Rebels with your host, Ebony Gale. This podcast is sponsored by the PRCA's Race, Ethnicity and Equity Board. Visit prca.org.uk/REEB to find out more.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gems in Comms series special, brought to you by 9 to 5 Work Rebels podcast. I am your host, Ebony Gale, and today I'm really excited to be speaking with Lynda Daboh, who is the founder of Wonder Communications, a boutique consultancy that specializes in travel, life and lifestyle PR and marketing. So welcome, Lynda.
Good morning. How are you?
I am good. Thank you so much for joining me. So just as I give you a bit of an intro into this podcast, essentially it is about me giving flowers to people of colour in the PR and comms industry in the UK, because in the industry in the UK, it is basically 91% white. And so therefore it is amazing to be able to spotlight talent that are doing some great things and to also just highlight that we are here and we are doing some great things. So essentially giving you your flowers. So, well done to you, Lynda, for carving out a wonderful career for yourself. So kudos to you.
Let me just interrupt you. Sorry, I just want to say flowers to you as well, because what you're doing is a brilliant thing. Such a little spotlight is shone on Black and people of color within this industry. And, when you say 91%, I'm in a sector, travel, that I'm sure is probably 99.1%.
Yeah.
So given the platform and also helping to inspire other people to get into this industry, I think what you're doing is brilliant. So sorry to interrupt you to say that. But
no, that's okay. I appreciate it. It's fine. It's an organic chat. So I appreciate for you returning the flowers to me. I appreciate that. So back to you, of course. So I want you to tell us, let's start off with the first question, which is for you to tell us about yourself and what you do, and followed with, have you always wanted to work in PR and comms?
So, I work with tourist boards and hotel clients from different parts of the world. And also I work with lifestyle, so food and some skincare brands. All of them have stories that are kind of connected to where they're from as well. So everything I do in some way, shape or form is linked to travel and culture from wherever that place is from. And then I also have a hat where I do content creation, which also kind of links back into travel and lifestyle. But I focus on sustainability, on eco-friendliness, because these things to me, they're completely interconnected. Everything we do is all connected. So sustainability weaves into travel, food, lifestyle, everything. So they're kind of two sides of the same coin, because whether you're on the comm side or the content creation side, they all work together. And it also means that because I work with journalists, with content creators, and I'm one myself, I know what they need, I know how they work. So it kind of makes my what I deliver for my clients that much smoother and easier. And I kind of have a 360 view of the whole industry.
And that's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's a really important industry, like you say, and it's great that you do it with the, essentially bringing back the culture and bringing that into it as well. I think that's really, really important.
I think it's and when you look at how the industry is now, and in terms of also consumers and what consumers are looking for, lifestyle is such an embedded part of everything now. People vote with their wallets. So how you portray a lifestyle is kind of fundamental in comms now as well. So,
absolutely. And I feel like
real story. Yeah.
Go on. I think that I completely agree with you. I was going to say that I think it's an important way to that we have to communicate. But I also think you picking up on the sustainability side of things is really important, particularly for the travel industry, because it's massive. And there are different countries at different levels of what they can be sustainable on. Because I remember going to Mexico a couple of years ago, and they were not giving out straws. They were giving out different ones. It was really interesting. So it's interesting to see how far different countries are with this. But it must be interesting for you because of
it is, and it's something because I've been a bit of a tree hugger for like years and years and years before it was even a thing.
I've been
content creating on sustainability for 12 years, so that was before Greta,
was even out there known.
But I think it's such a it's an issue that affects everybody, and especially affects people who are living in the global majority countries. They're the ones who are actually the most affected. And tourism, if you look at tourism, where people go on holiday to, most of those places are, sea levels this, you know, the beautiful beach you can see behind me, that's going to be impacted by global warming and all these issues for anywhere else. So I think that, you know, for the travel industry and everybody else, it's such a fundamental thing that we need to be aware of and doing better with. So
absolutely. That's really
and
interesting.
also, you know, environment, you know, the plastic, you know, the straws and so on. That's really important. But sustainability also involves human beings.
Yeah.
Are you treating people fairly? How, you know, how you're treating people, the people part of the planet is also really, really important to look at.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. Absolutely. No, thank you for that. So going back slightly, have you always wanted to work in communications and PR? What attracted you into the industry?
So I didn't even know. The short answer is no. Communications. I actually studied journalism. Okay. So journalism was something that, you know, as a child, my dad worked in journalism in Nigeria, which is where I was born. And so journalism was something that was always of interest to me. PR, I actually didn't even know that PR existed, really.
Okay.
I had no idea, but journalism was something. So I studied journalism. I did my NCTJ training, and then ended up working for a local newspaper in South London.
Right.
I could probably guess which one, because but I really didn't enjoy it. It was really, really old-fashioned. The editorial team, I think I was the only Black person there. I was very young and also, you know, female, and it was just a very old-fashioned, the way their attitudes were, so I didn't enjoy it at all. So I thought, no, actually, maybe journalism is not for me. So I actually ended up doing a summer job. I left that job, ended up doing a summer job as a receptionist at a PR agency. I just applied I didn't even know that it was a PR agency, really. It was just an agency. I just thought, oh, summer job, yeah. So I ended up as a receptionist there. And it turned out to be the founder of this PR agency was head of the PRCA at the time.
Oh, wow.
Oh, the CIPR at the time.
Okay.
But also, so I was picking up the phone and just being a receptionist, but I'm also somebody who doesn't really mind my own business all the time. So, and I'm also just a curious person. So I kind of, what do they do? Oh, what's that? What's that? And I think I must have made some kind of intelligent comment, whatever. So the managing director's a job came up about 2 months into me being a receptionist. So I think it was like August. I was due to be finishing in September. And they needed an account assistant or something. And they kind of said to me, oh, are you interested in this? Because I've been kind of not just been a receptionist. I'd also been kind of giving my input into different things. And so I ended up, that's how I kind of fell into PR. So I didn't know it existed. It was just simply a temp summer job. And, it was very corporate PR. It was stuff like forklift trucks.
Oh, interesting. Very different. Yeah.
It was completely like, I would never ever have chosen it if I'd known what it was.
Yeah.
It just would never ever have occurred to me. And then while I was working with them, they actually ended up doing the PR there was a newspaper called The New Nation that launched.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
Yeah. So they got the job to PR around that. And I was the only Black person in the agency. I said it was very corporate. So I think they ended up, oh, she's Black, she'll know all about.
I was going to say that.
Whatever.
So definitely got you and dragged you in there. Like, come on, this new nation.
But actually, it ended up being a blessing for me because I learned so much. And once you learn to do PR for forklift trucks and trademarks and franking machines, you can pretty much do PR for anything.
Absolutely.
So that was kind of how I fell into PR. And said the MD at the time, she actually was great in terms of helping me, get training and learn a little bit more about the industry. And then from there I ended up, I left that agency and ended up, doing some other things. And then I moved into working for Comic Relief, doing Red Nose Day, PR. And then I realized, okay, now I love travel. I've always loved travel. And now I've got this skill called, PR skills, which I didn't know about before. So I thought, how can I combine my two loves? And I was kind of searching through a newspaper. I saw an ad for a travel PR agency I applied for the job and I got into, so 20 years later, here I am in, travel PR. So that was kind of, how it happened. So it wasn't a planned thing. It was because I wasn't enjoying journalism. But, in the end, I kind of learned that it is two sides of the same coin back to, because as journalists, you're kind of waiting for news to happen. But as PR, you're kind of helping to create the news.
Creating the news.
And I love you had more agency in PR than my experience in journalism said, there are other experiences, and I'm sure it could be different in different scenario. But that particular place I was working just left me so uninspired. But it ended up leading me into PR.
Yeah, that's really interesting, really interesting. And I know there's quite a few people who started off in the journalism route and ended up in the PR side. So I think that's really interesting. And like you said, it's two sides of the same coin. It
is, because, I always, whenever I see, sometimes you see on Twitter, whatever, you see, journalists ranting about PRs. And I think that's a shame, because we can't exist without each other. I don't know any journalist who could survive without
PRs.
And something I used to do is I used to pick up the paper, because I am still, a news junkie. Every day I flick through and I kind of pinpoint what are PR stories, who, and go through a newspaper every day and you do that. And the number of pages that don't contain PR stories, you'd be, I think a lot of what we do is very kind of, nobody really sees what we're doing a lot of the time. They just assume that things happen by magic. But actually, it's
exactly that. I was going to say that it's like with magicians. Things happen. They're like, oh, okay, but they don't always give us our kudos in terms of.
They very rarely do. But I always think, oh, clever. I can always kind of trace back. Oh, I wonder, because also, it's also kind of gives me an idea. I always think, oh, okay, I can see how they did. Oh, yeah. So
you start to, the strategy side starts coming in. You start, clicking the dots. But that's really interesting. So you kind of fell into it essentially.
I didn't know it existed. I didn't know it was a thing. And then even travel PR was, again, something that if I hadn't, I didn't know existed. I had no idea about. I didn't know, I was thinking actually earlier, if I'd known. So within PR, I'd known of, I think, Yvonne Thompson, but she was doing PR focused on kind of Black brands and but I didn't really know anybody else in PR outside of that.
Okay.
And then, and when I went to travel PR, I didn't know a single person or even a Black person but it was just the way that, because I knew what my interests and passions were, and I had this skill set. So how could I kind of put them together?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. So I wanted to get into a bit of, I always start off asking about ethnicity and when did you become aware of your ethnicity? So I always share the example of myself going to school, just started secondary school, 11 years old, and then hearing about this racist group called Chelsea Smilers that would target Black and brown people and use a razor to cut their faces. So whilst obviously being quite aware that I was born in the skin that I was in, that was quite a key moment for me where I was kind of like, oh, wow, like it hit home quite differently. So is there like a moment for you,
to be honest, I mean, there are two things. So I was born in Nigeria and my, early childhood was there. So obviously coming to England, and in Nigeria, I was very much aware that there were people of different colors and different, but it just, in terms of day-to-day life, the idea that anybody would ever insult me because of my skin color, whatever, was just bizarre. And also, in Nigeria, you had an idea of, oh, Commonwealth, we're all brothers and sisters. And, so I think, the first, if I come to England, so when we moved to England, we lived in Canterbury, which was in my school of 500, 6, whatever people, I was the only person of color.
Yeah.
So that kind of gives you an idea of.
I was going to say, when you said Canterbury, I thought, oh, okay, yeah.
Yes, only person of color in my. I went to girls' school, only person of color.
Yeah.
And then where we lived as well. And then I think in my 3rd or 4th year, an Asian girl came. But at school, actually, at school itself, actually, I didn't really have any. People were interested or intrigued. But in terms of insults and bullying, I never had anything. But it was on the way to school. So the first incident I remember, I think there were others, but the one that kind of stays in my mind is I was walking through a park on the way to school, and there was a lady pushing her toddler in his pushchair. And then she saw me, she stopped, she reached on the ground, she picked up like a stone, she gave it to her toddler to throw at me. I
Oh,
was maybe
right.
13 at the time, 12, 13, because it was either first or second year of school. And I was just a woman with a young child throwing a stone at you, a child walking through a park. And it just, my mind really couldn't comprehend what had happened. I didn't actually even tell anybody about it till a lot longer after that, because
Yeah.
my brain could not compute this. Also, she said, offensive words as well. So,
Yeah.
but it was just, I still think about that child, like what happened to that little toddler, because when you see your mother doing that to somebody, how that will become that becomes your norm.
Normal.
What
Yeah, that's
happens to
normal
you?
for
What
that
happens after
for a
that?
child. Yeah.
And yes, that's the first one that I remember. And then there were other incidents, people refusing to like shake my hand, and stuff like that, or wherever. Or actually, yeah. So wherever you went to, always been very visible. People would look at you, people would stare at you, etc. But that with that lady with the pushchair, that really kind of is probably the first thing that I remember. And it was just such a shock, because said in Nigeria, you're taught to always be friendly to strangers. The thought that of ever throwing a stone at a stranger, or for any reason, it just
It's just
is
mind-boggling.
unimaginable, let
It
alone
really
something
is.
different. Yeah.
It's
So I think that,
imaginable. And I'm really sorry that happened, but that must have definitely been a key point in you, because I would remember that, thinking of a grown adult taking a
yeah,
stone to give to their toddler child to encourage them to be racist and throw things at a little girl
yeah.
who's walking
And
through
I
the
had my school unit. It wasn't like, and also, I looked older than my age, and there's a whole conversation about the adultification of black
Yeah.
girls. That I'll leave that out. But still, I was very tall for my age. But still, I had my school uniform
You can
on.
see you're a school
That's how
child.
I was a school. I was, yeah.
It's
And
disgusting. It's disgusting.
yeah,
It's so sad, because those are the environments that create racist children, because children are born innocent.
that's
It's
the
the
thing.
environment
So
that you go into. So clearly that environment was absolutely toxic. So
it
that poor
was,
child.
yeah. So I said I do always worry about, wonder what happened to, her, because she was. I mean, she at the time, when you're a child, you think anybody over 20 is old. So she must, looking
Yeah.
back, she was maybe mid-20s.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's a young person really, and we're not
That's a young
talking
person,
ancient
young,
history.
ignorant person. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So
really sad.
so that was, yeah, that's probably the first thing that I remember in terms of. And then also I share a birthday with Nelson Mandela,
Oh,
so
amazing.
which is something I've kind of always known. So always, whenever there was anything around apartheid, or which it's crazy when I think about. It was only in like the early 90s that ended. So I was I was aware that happened in the world, but in terms of me personally experiencing, it was when I moved to England that
Yeah.
and then that in Canterbury,
And then
where
having that. Yeah, absolutely.
that was, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing. I'm sorry that happened to you, but thank you for sharing that. And then, have you ever felt like race or your ethnicity has held you back in your career at any point?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where yes and no. So I'm somebody who's very I don't know if determines the right word, but like for instance, travel P, I knew I wanted to do travel PR, and I'm gonna find a way. I'm somebody who's very resourceful and very, if I have something I want to do, by hell or I will go for my goal.
Go for your
So I
goal.
think that the PR has benefited from in terms of that within me. So the opportunities that I've probably found myself that wouldn't have been given to me, but because I'm I'm quite good at focusing on what it is that I want to get to. So I've been in many, many spaces where I've been the only person of color, or I probably wouldn't have been the first person they thought of, but because I've found a way to get myself into that space somehow, because, um, so it means that I've probably lost out on opportunities where if I left it to other people to be aware of, then so the opportunities I've lost because I wasn't aware of them, because I wasn't in the room, because I wasn't able to, people weren't advocating for me. I've had to advocate for myself, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, I
So
get you.
I've definitely lost opportunities because of that.
Yeah.
And yeah, various old boys, old girls networks that exist. There's no question about that within
Yeah.
the industry. So yes, I think that's come into play for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I want to ask you, have you yourself maybe experienced it or witnessed racism in the workplace? And if so, how was it handled?
Yeah. The first time it was, I won't go into this very exact specifics, but I was in a meeting. This was very early in my career. And one of the clients at the table made a comment about how somebody was as intelligent as a white person.
Excuse me?
Yeah. He's, and so immediately the meeting finished, I said I was like very at 20 to whatever. Yeah. So I immediately said to my account director, had she heard what he'd said, how offensive it was, how it was racist, and they needed to have a word with him.
Yeah.
And I was told, oh, he didn't mean it like that. No, he didn't mean it like that. No, you're just being very, I don't know the word touchy, but I was told that the person didn't mean it like that.
Yeah, the usual.
Yeah. And I was very, upset about it. And it was, ignored, basically. I was told to shut up. And then about 3 weeks later, this same person made a comment about older women. And he was a very offensive person all around. He made a comment about older women. And after that meeting, it was immediately, oh my God, he's such a bigot. He's so, how dare. We've got to speak to him now. So that kind of told me, okay, so actually you do recognize when somebody is being completely out of order and offensive. It's just who they're offending that you decide.
Exactly.
So that was the first time. So it was handled. So when I witnessed racism myself, said it was handled appallingly because it wasn't handled.
Yeah.
But it kind of, the first time I kind of saw that firsthand that, whenever somebody is racist, other people are very much aware of it. Yeah. They make excuses for it. The fact that I was told, he didn't mean it like that.
Yeah.
He was trying to compliment this person.
What did he mean it by? How exactly did he mean that? I mean, that's blatantly racist, but they didn't want to tackle that. But when it came to the comment about the old women, they were happy to tackle that one because it affected them, obviously. It probably hit their own nerve.
Yes.
Typical.
So then I believe, somebody had a word with him and I think he apologized to her properly. He never, what happened to me was never kind of addressed. But yes, that was the first time that I witnessed firsthand. And, said I had kind of raised it, even though I knew that it probably, because I was the junior in the room, and really it should have been one of my directors. And, there were 3 layers above me, who should have been dealing with this, but they didn't. So I shouldn't have been the one to raise it, actually. But and it was ignored. But yeah.
Again, well done to you for raising it because, you still felt confident enough to raise it. The fact that they didn't deal with the issue, that's that on them, but you did what you had to do in that situation. So good on you for raising it. So thank you. And I was going to say, was there a time that you maybe wish you spoke up about something else, or a time when you did speak up and self-advocate? And that's a good example because you did. You was quite young as well, thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's one of those, ignorance of, but also, when I think back as a teen, when I was in my teenagers, I've been part of Youth Anti-Racist Alliance. So I was somebody who from, quite a young age was
vocal and aware
of it. About, yes, because one of those, I guess, not innocence of youth, but bravery of youth, because it's like I think also going back to, I think being born in Nigeria and Africa, because you see firsthand the difference in, you're used to having not having a voice, but you're used to the idea that your skin color should limit you in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
It's just like, what on earth is this nonsense I'm dealing with here? Because you're so used to
a problem. Exactly. You're like
living a life, and so it's like each time somebody does something, you're like, hold on, are you on? It's such a
it's a bit of a shock into the system.
So I think that's also what gave me the impetus to. So I mean, other times I think there were I think there were probably at the same company there were probably a couple of other things that happened. But because I'd seen that it wasn't going to be dealt with, I didn't even bother. I probably, possibly rolled my eyes at something because, my face used to be quite, my feelings about if
you
I
wear
think
it in your
something.
face. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think, people would have had a sense that, but I think, that something else happened in that company as well that I wasn't very, impressed by. But again, I was a junior. I didn't say anything. I think I kind of made a pointed look. I didn't say anything because I knew it wasn't going to get dealt with. So,
which makes sense because
yeah.
you're going to go with the environment that you're in. If that environment isn't conducive for you to be able to speak up and raise issues, and you've really been kind of shut down, then you're going to be like that. But that's really interesting.
It was, and then the other things that sometimes are, I think that as a Black person, I'm somebody who I trust my feelings and my gut. I don't gaslight myself. So when somebody is racist, I know it.
Yeah.
When they do something, but sometimes I do it in a way that actually on paper,
it's hard to prove because it's very.
You need to say to somebody that the reason it's just you can't explain it. Because you absolutely,
but as Black people, you get it. You have there's that intuition. You get it. There's a vibe.
And there's a way they've said something. They might have said, "How are you?" Which is, and you can't say, "Oh, they said how are you" to mean a certain way or a certain act. You just on paper you can't put it. So there are things that happen like that where somebody has been racist, but it's not in a way that I can catalog. So I can't do anything about it. I've just had to note it in my mind, and protect myself in interaction with the person. So there's things like that have happened, but and also I'm somebody who I always think, okay, are you sure it's racist before I think there's an idea that whenever any Black person talks about racism, everything is about racism. Well, I mean that's a different conversation, but we go through all these checklists to be sure before we think that or say that something is racist. We've been through all these different things in our mind. Could it be this? Could it be this? Could it be that? Could it be that? So by the time we get to know this person was racist,
Yeah, exactly that. I know, because we don't want to be gaslit and we always get thrown this whole thing of, the race card, like it's their get out free jail card. But it's like, well, no, actually, we know the differences and how we're being treated.
Absolutely.
Within Britain in particular, it is very covert racism. My mum's always said that. My mum's from the Caribbean, and she's always said, it's very covert racism. It's not like in America where it's in your face and they'll just scream in your face the N-word. Whereas over here, it is definitely covert. It's behaviors, it's microaggressions. It's a lot.
There's so many levels. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I completely get that. So no, I appreciate you saying that. So I wanted to ask get your thoughts on code switching. Do you feel we as people of color will be able to lead with our authentic voices in the workplace, or will we be forever code switching? I personally feel like we'll be forever code switching. But again, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it depends. I think, the comms industry is such a broad sector. And I think it's interesting because we now live in a world where many of the cultural moments and people driving the culture are Black people. So if you work in a part of comms that is working with clients within kind of, whether it's, fashion, there's certain sectors that without the inputs of Black culture, it would be dead and dry.
Yeah.
And so I think it very much depends on what sector you're in.
Yeah.
And also the population. So if you're in London, for instance, the population of I think they're saying by 2050, is it going to be 50%? I've got to look at the demographics, but in one generation, the majority population of London in particular, I think the rest of the UK is going to be different, but London in particular is going to be people of color. And I hate that phrase, by the way. Also, BAME, but
I don't like BAME either. I know. People of color I've gotten used to, but BAME.
I like to say global majority to be,
That's what I do as well. I like that.
Because
it's the truth. It's actually the truth.
Yeah.
The majority.
So in terms of the code switching sectors, that I think that in lots of sectors of comms and PR, code switching, interesting enough, is actually coming from non-people of color in some ways, I've noticed, because they're trying to show that they're down. Yeah, which I think is interesting. It's they're pretending they're not as which so And I think the code switching conversation as well, there are different things in terms of authenticity. So I think that it depends on what you mean by that, and whether it's simply about imitating the majority culture, or because, let me see, how can I put it? I think that there's certain spaces in which actually, for me, I don't necessarily want everybody to know about my business. So in terms of being who I am professionally, that's a separate entity. Do I want, all my, when I was, with an agency, all my colleagues knowing everything about, actually, no, I quite like the division. So in code switching, if that means you can be authentically yourself, but you can be your authentic professional self.
Yeah. No, when I say code switching, you're going to be yourself, but you're code switched into the environments. So essentially, like, for example, I was talking to someone last week that I interviewed, and we was talking about the Caribbean people and how, like, my mum's Jamaican and how she has a telephone voice. Yeah. And I learned that from a young age. That's what I mean by code switching. Right. So essentially making ourselves more amenable to the environment. Right. Well, it doesn't mean you're necessarily taking away. You might be holding back a couple of bits of layers.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I think
the environment.
Yeah. I think that is. I think that will. I think that will carry on being, and I think that within the comms industry, I think absolutely. I think that code switching is going to carry on. Outside the sectors that I've mentioned already, where it's kind of the reverse code switching that's happening, which I said, I always find it amusing when I kind of see it. I think that there's going to be an element of that, because in terms of when you look at, as you've mentioned, the statistics of PR, what it is still like. And generally human beings will try and fit into various spaces. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I think sometimes it can be a good thing too, because like you say, you want to keep your full self maybe to yourself. You don't want to do that. You might save that for your friends, and in your work environment, you have this hat that you put on. I do think for the younger generation, it's a bit different, because I feel like for some of them, depending on the industry, like you say, they maybe be able to be a bit more their authentic selves. And I think it depends on generations, because I grew up in a generation where, like I said, I've watched my mum code switch all the time in terms of speaking to people on the phone and whatever else. In my family, they'll be speaking the patois around them. And then you go into different environments, they're very much, back to PC. So I think it does impact you depending on your generational examples and experiences as well. So it's all really interesting.
Absolutely.
This podcast is sponsored by the PRCA's Race, Ethnicity and Equity Board. Visit prca.org.uk/REEB to find out more.
And, and also, I think that when we talk about the comms industry, we also have to look at our clients, the media, it's all part of a big ecosystem, and the changes or the evolution that needs to happen within those spaces as well, so that everybody can be authentic, because I think that there's challenges within all those spaces. That all kind of, if you were to do one of those Venn diagrams,
they all
get
kind of
spot in the middle. Because if you are speaking patois, but your clients don't understand it, or journalists don't understand it, that has an impact on why you have to code switch.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
I think the short answer is that it is going to carry on beyond, for the foreseeable, until things society-wise change.
I agree with you. So when did you become aware of the color bias in the PR and communications industry specifically?
I mean, so I said, my first PR job, I was the only Black person there.
Okay.
Working in travel PR, I can't tell you in travel PR. So travel PR, the only time you see people of color, Black people, is if they work for tourist boards, generally speaking. So in terms of comms teams.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there's slight changes now, but for probably the majority of my career, and also I've been working for international tourist boards. I was doing the PR for Miami, Cyprus, India, Maharashtra, Indianapolis, California. So a lot of the time, little me was representing Miami or India. Amazing. So it was brilliant, because I think people will probably, when I turn up, I'm doing the PR for Mumbai. People are,
yeah, look at you like, oh, this black lady. Oh, okay.
Yeah. But so it was said, it was great for me, and I really enjoyed said that I wasn't limited in terms of what I did.
Yeah.
But for sure, if I'm in a
very,
room,
very white industry, isn't it? Travel, yeah,
it is incredible. As I said, if it's 91%, it's 99.1% in travel PR.
Yeah.
I haven't, I'd have to drill down to the statistics, but based on just visually, if it was, I mean, it's less than 1%, less,
I believe that. So for you've already, even like you said, well, your first job, you was the only black person in the office. Anyway, for you've had that throughout your career. And a bit like me, even though within a lot of the spaces that I've worked in, there've been black people across different departments. There have been a few black people here and there, but I was always like the manager, the only black manager, or going to cross meetings. You're like, oh, like there's one other black person over there. Wow, across a sea of white people. So I feel like I became more aware of it, though. It more solidified it for me when I started going to a lot of the industry networking events. And that's when I started to see even more. And when I started to get involved with PR, and I was on the board for that. And so it would be like, it's just a sea of white women. And it was just really fascinating to me, because I was like, well, where are people of color here? So it's lovely that now that we've got things like
absolutely. And especially since I've been in London, London is such a multicultural space. And also travel. If you think of travel, you don't get more international and global than
that. And we're the global majority. So how is it that we're not in these spaces more? Because actually, it's a lot of it is places that we originate from, So
absolutely.
It's really fascinating.
It really is. And, one of my roles, when I went to the travel agency, I ended up becoming MD of that agency. But whenever I was, we were, employing people or, getting interns and so on. Looking back now, the majority of interns that I hired were people of color. And it wasn't like I was purposely doing that. They were the best candidates for the job,
Yeah.
But I guess I was trying to also create some, for there to be some kind of change as well.
Yeah.
Because I could, the industry definitely needed it. And just in terms of creativity, and when you have something that's homogenous, you miss out so much flavor. You miss out so much inspiration. It's a bit like, oh God, who was it that said that you can't keep on doing the same thing and expect different results?
Was it Einstein? Or was it Charlie? Was it Einstein? Or was it
I think it was Einstein. Yeah, it's Einstein. Madness too. Yeah. And I think for certain sectors of travel, of PR, you can't keep having the same, you need nearly every great idea often comes from somebody with a different viewpoint, because often we understand everything about the majority because we see it. So we're also coming with this extra secret weapon of different cultures and different knowledge and different awareness that actually is this secret weapon that should be completely, respected and recognized. And, so it's
really interesting. So I want to get your thoughts on allyship. What does it mean to you? And what would you say is like a good example of allyship?
Allyship, to me, to be honest, it's actions speak louder than words in many ways, because I guess we cannot avoid talking about Black Square Summer. There's no way to get, because also in terms of colleagues or former colleagues realizing that I was Black, and that it might have had an impact on my life, etc.
Yeah.
All of us within the industry will kind of know what that felt like, right?
Yeah.
So I think that in terms of allyship, I think that people telling me that they've read a certain book, I'm glad that they've done that. But to me, it's about, what are you actually doing within your network, within your space, within your agency, that is where allyship to me is a real thing. So I want to know that. So when you recruit, when you do your activity, for instance, the journalists you work with, how diverse is that network of that you're working with, your recruitment processes, in terms of when even PRs, I've noticed sometimes, like when they're pitching to different publications, are they including publications for, with different demographics to them, and obviously relevant to your specific client, and that it meets with them. But it's what are you actually doing? That's where I see allyship. What are you actually doing? Obviously, at the moment, Black History Month and so on. Lots of things will be happening. How are you treating? Actually, how are you treating your Black staff, if you have any? If you don't, I actually don't believe that people should. What's the word? If you don't have Black staff, should you proactively go and look to have, to find Black staff? Where are you recruiting? And it may be that, you're in a part of the world, or you're in a place where, for whatever reason, Black staff are not coming to you. So that's fair enough. But how are you proactively, where are your networks that you're going to look at recruiting your staff from?
Yeah. And also, do you have the environment to attract Black people too? Do you have the environment that's going to cultivate them? Because there's no point in the tokenistic moment and bring someone in for them to be miserable and have to leave with the cooking.
Absolutely. And also that your staff are not, when you do have Black staff, that you're not using them as always because I find that also, I mean, I work for myself now, so it's different. But if I, within agencies or whatever, your Black staff often will be the ones who are re-traumatized all the time, because every time something happens in the news or there's a crisis statement regarding race to be made, people will go to the Black member of staff to do, and actually that's doing extra work and traumatizing and triggering for them. But that's not it's just because, you're Black, so automatically you must be the expert in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Sometimes they may be, but often actually they're not. And I think that true allyship comes from knowing that racism is not just an issue for Black people. It's an everybody problem. And a true ally understands that.
Yeah.
And they understand that there's steps that they need to take to resolve. You can't resolve racism because it's,
But to address it, to try and help the issue, to try and
what are you going to do? What are you doing? What are you actually doing? Said, actions over, both go together, because obviously, what you say is part of what you're doing. Yeah. But I want to see action. That's what I want. Allyship, to me, it's ultimately knowing that and showing that racism is not just a problem for Black people.
Absolutely.
And what you're going to do about that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the first thing that white people need to recognize is that racism is not something that it's not our construct. We didn't construct that. It is a construct. It is a societal construct, but it isn't something that we constructed. So it needs to be deconstructed by them, because they're the ones who put it in.
Absolutely. So
I get that. And that's why I completely agree with you on the DEI thing. A lot of Black people get thrown into that. And it's like, well, actually, they might not even be interested in doing that. It's because they're the Black person doesn't mean they want to speak up and be the voice of all Black people. They're not. We're not a monolith. So again, good points. I agree with you. Completely agree with you.
Yeah.
So going a bit more into you, what motivates you and what inspires you to keep going with your business and in the industry?
Gosh, I think, Sarah, ultimately, I'm a very curious person, and I love sharing stories about places and helping people see things differently or learn about things they didn't know about before. Travel in particular. I think travel is, for so many people, it is an escape. It is where they find pleasure. And I think also for people of color, often travel has been something they've been forced to do for economic, whatever reasons. So we're living in a time now where people are traveling for pleasure, and helping people discover about different places, and and the impact of what, we're all connected ultimately.
We are.
And travel is a key part of that. So, during the P words that, we've all been through.
Yes, that must have been quite crazy for you, right?
Oh my God, it was crazy because we were the worst hit industry. There was no other industry where everything closed. Yeah. And in the history of the world, there's never been a time where actually so many borders have ever been closed.
Yeah.
It was, and I traveled as soon as we were able to. And Jamaica was the first place I went to.
Oh, amazing.
But I was actually, my heart broke because it was the first time I'd ever seen anybody in the Caribbean actually like straight up beg me for money.
Wow.
Never ever happened ever.
Wow.
I see people hustling, but actual begging, because tourism is such an important factor and revenue generator in the Caribbean in particular. Yeah. The people, the knock-on effects, it's not just about the hotels. It's about people, all those, guides, children they send to school, all the farmers who are producing the food that goes to the hotels, or, all the ripple effects that people don't really think about. Tourism is not just about a hotel and a plane. There are so many rings around it.
Yeah.
Everybody ultimately is affected and impacted by it. And that really kind of drove it home to me, how tourism is embedded. It's not just like going online on the beach, taking that selfie. There's actually so many levels to what you're doing.
Don't think about. And that's just
you really don't.
We just go on a plane, we turn up at our hotel, we get our cocktails and relax, but there's so much more involved in that. Just like around pandemic. And it's so much. I can imagine for you, the industry, like you said, the Caribbean's always really badly hit. I remember watching something about Bali, because that's on my list. And they were really badly hit because obviously massive tourist industry for them as well. And you just don't realize it until you see it in that form, because like you said, there's so many, layers to it, and people working in this layer, and they all are making money for their families, and it's just a big.
And tourism also, but women in particular, there's so many women who are employed in tourism globally. Again, intersectionality, but often not at the highest levels. But tourism without women, so many of the guides and interpreters are female. Yeah. That tourism wouldn't run without them. And then also the ripple effects. So they're, when they're not working, and sometimes it means they can't send their children to school because they don't have the money for that. Which again, a lot of women have a lot of freedom from tourism globally. They can do things, they can go to places that within their culture they may not be able to normally, or so for me, as I said, going back to being able to kind of share stories about different places, and awareness and the joy, because nearly everything, wherever you are in the world, especially in the UK in particular, everything, almost from the language, English words are full of words from other cultures. Mm-hmm. Our food is involved, we're going to, ignore the whole empire colonialism thing, but everything we eat, whether it's our tea, chocolate, coffee, potatoes, all of those things wouldn't have existed without going to travel, going to other places, and discovering these amazing, wonderful things, which they then, brought back in sketchy ways, but we're going to ignore that. But without being able to travel, this everything that there is within here wouldn't exist. Yeah. So for me, how you connect the dots between, where you go on holiday and here, how you bring a sense of that back as well, how you share those stories, how you create excitement, are all part of why I love what I do. And I love being able to, at the moment, there's a reality TV program that I've been behind the scenes involved in part of it. And again, it's a lot of what we do, except nobody sees it. So people are watching people on honeymoon in a program, and it's like, oh, I remember I was behind that when it was being filmed. I was the one who kind of did certain things. So it's kind of seeing things that happen within culture and within the world, and having some kind of impetus in helping create that.
That's what keeps you going. That's lovely.
Yeah, and I know that I'm never going to be bored, because there's always going to be something else, something new. And I always try and work with clients or that kind of weave along with my interests. So I'm always finding a way to make things interesting for myself. And if it's interesting for me, hopefully it'll be interesting for other people. Yeah. And whoever the audience might be for the thing that is that I'm working on behalf of my clients.
That's lovely. What would you say you found most challenging so far on your journey?
Gosh. Oh God. I mean, there's so many different levels of challenges and different experience. So it's, a lot of the time I've been working with like governmental bodies and governmental tourist, boards and from different parts of the world and different. So they're challenging because often tourist boards are often kind of quite political entities, and so when you've got your comms plan, but and what you want to do and your different stages within that, but you're then having to deal with or work with other people out of the country, obviously, who have different agendas and different ways of seeing things. So you have to communicate, and I think so you're often as the comms or PR person, you're often kind of translating between between your clients and whoever the end, whether it's these days, it's not just media, obviously, as we know, social media and so on. But you're often kind of like a translator between and trying to explain to your client why something's not going to work for you. And then you're also trying to talk to either consumers and media. And that's actually quite a challenge. So half your job is actually spent not doing the end results, but the translation between these different parties. And that's, again, a huge part of the unseen work that we do that uses up a lot of time and energy and strategy that nobody ever sees.
Absolutely.
Always sees their side of the story. They never see how you kind of
had to negotiate and,
yes.
push a few arms here and there.
Absolutely. That never gets seen. So I think that's a huge challenge. And then when also, said different languages, also communicate different time zones, different ways of doing things. Yeah, that's a big challenge. Yeah, because sometimes I have this, I have an idea for something, but then making it happen because of the things you can't control is a big challenge. I think that's a big. And then also, now I think that the news cycle and where people get their news from is a huge challenge. The level of misinformation that there is, people, I'm talking to youngsters, Gen Z, whatever. I don't know any of them who read newspapers anymore. They get all their news from TikTok, Facebook. Twitter is now kind of doing that in terms of people getting their news. So it's a bit like trying to, you're wrestling with the air to try and, before, you'd pick up all the national newspapers, you'd see what was in there, you go to homepages. Now, it's, especially doing crisis communications, that's a real challenge when you're having to look at things being spread on social media. And it takes one thing that isn't fact checked that's kind of finds its way around the world, becomes viral before you've even had a chance to fact check it. And often it's misinformation. It's incorrect. People have already decided to, troll you or whatever based on that incorrect information. So I think in this day and age now, it's a massive challenge. And, within travel, so people, consumers now, if they're unhappy with something, they can immediately just go on their social media. So then their hotel or wherever they are, they can immediately just, for whatever reason, decide to. So I think managing all of that,
that's more challenging. Yes, I can imagine that. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. But particularly in social media and for the fact that we do use it in that way, because I certainly do. If I've got a problem, I know that if I fix the social media, it will get dealt with because we're looking at reputational issues. So I know it will get through. So being on the other side of that, I know that can be quite a task as well. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And then going back with your employee hat on, what would you say? What was it you wanted from an employer? What made a good working environment for you?
I would say a sense of being supported as an employee. So a sense of being supported. So I'm not being either overwhelmed with. You're in PR, problem is you are often overwhelmed with work, but knowing that there was some kind of structure in place. So, for instance, if you were overwhelmed, because within agencies, the reality is that often agencies, there is a lot of work within agencies. So how is that going to be handled? If somebody is overwhelmed, what's the structure in place for them to be able to say, that, or actually, I can't do this all myself. I need, assistance. That's really important. I think that what's the word? Not that people where they require support. So let's say, what's an example I can think of? Basically, that there is some kind of structure in place to provide support when people need it, I think is something that's really important. So, and I don't expect, work to be therapists or counselors, but that there's a structure in place so the work can happen the way it should do. But when what happens when there's a problem, sorry, is I guess that what I'm trying to drill it down to, I'm kind of going around the houses to say that. What happens within an agency or when there's an issue? How do they deal with problems? When you require additional support for whatever reason, what happens then?
Yeah.
I think is something that's really important, because when everything's, going wonderfully, even times, there are times when things are, you're actually working crazy hours, but you're enjoying it. So it's fine. But when you're not enjoying it and there's, for whatever reason, what is the structure in place to deal with issues? I think is something that's really important.
Okay.
And and also going back to when I'd raised an issue about the racist person, how was that dealt? How are you going to deal with that? Because also, it shouldn't be up to the junior person to be the one looking out for these things.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And not just racism, sexism, homophobia, and so on.
Hey, neurodiversity, all that. Absolutely agree.
Who is looking out for that then? Who is all addressing it and leaving it to the junior person or the victim to bring it up all the time? To me, that's a massive red flag. I want to see a culture where everybody is invested, because again, these things are not just the problem of the victim; they're everybody's problem. So.
I agree with you. And then what would you say, what does really good DEI or EDI, whichever way you're going to put it, what does it look like to you?
Oh, gosh. Wow. I'm trying to think, have I ever witnessed it with, I work for myself now. So within an agency, what does it look like?
What is it like for you? Because you work for yourself now, so obviously,
for me, it's about people feeling seen, people feeling that they don't have to that we're all buying into this one thing. That certain things that are absolute no's for us, certain things. So, for instance, going back to how racism is not just a Black person's problem; it's everybody's problem. And that everybody buys into that. Everybody understands that you can't, if you witness something, you don't turn a blind eye to, you don't pretend that's okay. All of us have to deal with whatever that thing is. Nobody feels like because of a certain status, they're on their own, they have to deal with it by themselves. Nobody else cares about that thing. We all have to care about that thing. I think that's something that's really important. Respecting people's cultures, respecting being, understanding that everybody's cultures, everything they bring to the table, it's all a blessing. If we're all the same and we all have the same viewpoint and the same history and the same, actually, we're probably not going to create magic. Like, things happen and things are sparked because of the different places you've seen, the different places books you've read, the different music you listen to. That's how you come up with great ideas, because this color and this color, and when I say color, I'm not talking about skin color, I'm talking about, literally colors. That's how you create magic. And, I'm a believer in that. I guess, again, lucky that, but, work we spend the majority of our waking lives are spent at work. If you're not won the lottery, even a lot of people lottery, they still want to, go to work, but so much of our working day is spent, that if you're spending your time at your job and you're having to kind of hide a big chunk of who you are, there's a kind of a issue there. So DEI means that everybody feels that they are invested in the culture of where they are and they're not ignored, but they're seen and they're respected. and that they're treated in a manner that everybody can achieve what they want to achieve, based on their capabilities. That they're not going to be barriers in place that are systemic for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. No, thank you for sharing that. Now I want to get a bit into your proudest moments. So can you tell us about your proudest moment? It could be work, personal, or a career highlight.
Oh gosh. There's so many.
That's
No.
nice.
God. Um. Gosh. What I guess. Looking at various things. There was a tourist board client who I managed to negotiate with the National Gallery for them to have. They had an exhibition, and for this tourist board client to kind of not take over, but to be front, right, and center, because this particular artist, a lot of their paintings was based on a specific destination. So
Okay.
getting the National Gallery it was the first time they'd done anything like this, the
Yeah.
National Gallery to actually have this partnership with a tourist board, and for it to be kind of, center right everywhere. That was quite a proud moment, because it was something that hadn't been done before. And now you see kind of institutions doing things along these lines now, but I was the first time that they had done it, so that was quite a proud moment.
That's lovely.
Yeah, so that was something that was like, so it was the first kind of collaboration of its kind in that field. And so that felt, and also it was showing that destinations, travel, and culture are so deeply intertwined.
It aligns so well. It's really good because, like you said, it's all intertwined. So absolutely agree with you there.
Yeah,
that's amazing. That's a nice one. Because like you said, travel, destinations.
That was, and then I just have a personal bit, is that at the moment I haven't quite finished it yet, but at the moment I'm working on a directory about A beauty, and A beauty is African beauty. So it's a field, because when again, a lot of the time, nearly every luxury beauty product that you see, when you look at the ingredient list, they've got a lot of ingredients that are from Africa. And often they don't acknowledge that or show that. So I've got this little mission at the moment that when it's all done, it will be a great achievement of highlighting A beauty, African beauty ingredients, the founders, the history, the artisan, because all these ingredients, the knowledge of them and all their wonderful antioxidants, we don't really talk about them, and the luxury brands will talk about them, but actually they should, because their product would not exist without these ingredients. So I've got a directory I'm working on, all about that, and I'm working very hard at it at the moment. So that, when it's finished, it's going to be another big achievement, because it'll be the first of its kind, kind of talking about.
Awesome. Well done, Lynda. I love that. I look forward to hearing that. I'm going to be looking out for that.
So keep looking for the word. I've been trying to push this A beauty. So yeah, because as in A top. So yeah.
Oh, it sounds amazing. I'm going to follow up on that for sure, because I think that makes so much sense. And you're quite right. So much ingredients are from Africa, and we just don't know it. And people need to know that.
So many. It's when, all the luxury brands, when you look at the ingredient lists, and they talk about their, Italian product or the French this, but they never mention the fact that they wouldn't exist. Their product wouldn't exist without these African sourced and grown, and the knowledge about these ingredients has come from Africa. So
and it makes sense, doesn't it? Because they've gone and pillaged and taken resources from all different parts of Africa. So of course they'll put into their own ingredients, but then label it as their own. But I think this is interesting. I think it'll be interesting to see how the beauty industry reacts to your directory.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that. And so, what are your thoughts on how the industry will evolve over the next few years? Because we've got AI, which is here and moving. So what are your thoughts in terms of how you feel like it's going to evolve? DEI to me seems to be dwindling. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, there's so many issues, even talking about DEI, we've kind of gone backwards, haven't we, as well?
Yep.
Which is a problem, a massive problem for the industry, because we're not talking the talk, we're not walking the walk. So and that has to change. And I think part of that change will be who comes into the industry will be part of changing that. But it's back to something that has to be taken more seriously in real proper allyship. AI is a massive issue on actually very many levels. So there's the level of the misinformation level, because problem that I've experimented with AI because any new tools that come along, I want to see how they work. And the fact checking side, the fact checking is just awful. Like if you were to just rely on AI to absolutely horrendous fact check it, the information just makes things up.
Well, that's
and then also because of how AI is trained, it's not very diverse in terms of the training for AI and the knowledge source. It is not a diverse set of it's not using a diverse bank. So in terms of what it generates, whether you're trying to generate art. So if a lot of the time when people generate art, even for an AI, it's always kind of pale skin, for instance, something. So there's a whole lack of diversity in terms of generative AI, in terms of the output, because it's not using a diverse enough database to learn from.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be a massive issue. And then also, it comes out with something that are kind of offensive as well because of the data set that it's using. And because AI is not based on fact, it's based on language, which causes lots of challenges. So for the comms industry obviously is leaning into it, because on some levels there's the idea that it can take away the more junior skills, and I'm sure that there are things that it can do. So coming up with ideas and stuff, it has its use there, but that is going to be, if we don't get to the root of what it's trained on, then I think it could be very problematic for the industry.
Yeah.
And then DEI is something that the industry needs to be serious about. Not just say it's serious about, it actually needs to be serious and be taking proactive steps, so that we're not kind of slipping back and before we know it, we're back in the pre-2020 era, when nobody kind of acknowledges anything or deals with anything really properly. And then what else is there? I think that linked into DEI is also intersectionality. I feel like the industry doesn't really, doesn't really face that, deal with that very well still, I think. But I think that's probably linked to DEI anyway, because if you are dealing with that all properly, you would recognize where the
absolutely
certain things. So I still see far too many panels at events and so on, where the only time I see a black face is when they're talking about diversity. I want to see experts. There's so many events year in, year round on all the topics that there are in the comms world, and I want to be seeing diverse panels all year round, not just 1 month a year. I don't only want to see people of color talking about diversity. That's something else.
So, we get bored of that, don't we? It's just like, well, come on now. We're very talented people in all different arenas.
Precisely. We have all the other things we've done, please. Also. So
I agree.
What else? I think I've now lost track, haven't I? I haven't answered. Did I answer your question?
You answered. You answered. You definitely have. I'm going to move into our next question. You definitely answered it. So, what key lessons have you learned throughout your career that you could give us, for example? Maybe just like 2 or 3 key lessons you've learned.
Yeah, I'd say key lesson is to always be curious. Curiosity is a massive thing. Always want to know what's happening, why it's happening, and especially with clients. Actually, I want to know what is it that they don't want either what is it that they don't necessarily want other people to know.
Right.
Because I think it's actually a really important thing to do. You can't just know all the wonderful good things. You have to know the full story.
Yes.
If you are the PR, make sure that you kind of know the full story about whatever it is, because nothing is 100% perfect all times. And actually, that isn't already that isn't a bad thing, that something isn't perfect all the time. If you're transparent and honest about it, it can be a strength, actually. If you look at, brands and so on. So I'd say something that is being curious and making sure that you kind of know the full picture of something.
Yeah.
And what other lesson? Yeah, my mind's gone blank now. Yeah.
We'll take that lesson. That's fine. We'll take that one. That's a nice lesson. So what advice would you give to young people of color considering entering the industry, or young people from the global majority, I should say? There you go.
I would say absolutely enter it, because there is a space for you. And actually, you're going to be bringing something that this industry absolutely needs. As I said, secret sauce, you are bringing something this industry needs, because also, based on the audiences, and something different, something that's going to change things. So absolutely come into this. It's an industry where, if you want to, as I say, a bit like, both of us were saying that when you pick up a publication, or you watch something, and you know that somehow in the back of that you were part of how that got to that page, that you're sharing people's stories, that you are part of creating the news, or the news agenda in some way, shape, or form. That is an amazing thing. And that is something that absolutely you should be part of. That you have the potential to have the power and the knowledge to be able to help shape the news, not just be impacted by it, but actually help shape it. So you absolutely deserve to be here to do that. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's really good. And moving into mindset, this is my last 2 questions. And I always like to touch on mindset because I, just love personal development. So how do you deal with the internal mind war? How do you manage self-limiting beliefs?
Gosh, it's that could be a toughie. I tend to do certain things I kind of tell myself. So I always tell myself that I've been going through tricky times at the moment, but blah blah. But I always think, okay, so whatever it is that you're going to deal with today, or you've probably already been through, you've survived every single bad day you've been through. You're here, you've survived every single bad day you've been through. So that's something I always tell myself when things are, bad. You can do this. You've done it before.
Right.
And then something I've been doing recently is, because, the human brain, we remember bad things 5 times more than we remember good things. So I've started, whenever I get, a good comment from a client or whatever, I've decided to keep a file of these things, so that whenever I'm having a day where I'm thinking, oh my God, I can't do this, my brain, I then go to that file and look at it and remind myself of all the good things people have said and I've done. Because up in the moment, like even when you ask me highlights, your brain, you remember all the negative things. You don't remember the positive things.
Yeah.
So now having a physical thing where I actually think, oh, okay, let me go to that folder, on my phone or whatever. Oh yeah, I did. Oh God. And because you forget, like even this year, I've done some things, actually just talking to you now, I remember things like, oh wow, I did that. Because you forget. Yeah. Your brain is too busy thinking. So I want to keep my brain top with all the positive things I've done, because our brains, ultimately they're trying to protect us. That's why we remember bad things more. Mm-hmm. But by proactively, like taking my vitamins, to me, it's like taking my vitamins. I'm going to remember the good things I've done, the things I've achieved, because that will keep me kind of, my brain kind of, okay, you can do this. Yes, you can do this. Yes, you can.
I love that. I think that's really nice. I think that's lovely that you have something that you can go and look at and do that. And I think that's a lovely tip, actually, for people to.
Yeah, because it makes such a difference, because you forget. So this year, I've completely forgotten about all the stuff I'd done, and then you go to that thing. Oh yeah, or even writing things down. So I'd have it either have it on the back page of your notebook or whatever, so that whenever you're having a moment of doubting, you remembered that actually, no, you've done this, you can do this. Yeah,
I think that's really nice. I think that's nice. That's a nice tip to take. I might do that myself. I think that's useful, because you're right, because our our brains are automatically think negative. You know, they say something like 70%, over 70% of our thoughts are negative. So we have to work hard to reverse that. And that's, like you said, it is protection. But again, you have to put back in the good things. So I think that's a really good tip. That's a really, really good tip. And then looking back over your journey, would you do it all over again, Lynda?
Oh, gosh. Oh. I think I would have liked, going back, I'd have liked to have explored journalism in a different environment than the one that I was in.
Right.
But I think I would still probably have ended up, I still probably would end up in a similar place to, to terms of where I am. So my destinations would have been the same, but I may have taken, slightly different
here and there.
Yeah. But I would have I'm pretty sure I'd have come to this, because both of the things, content creating, comms, PR, it's all around the same, same area. I'm just darting slightly different ways. So I think, I would have taken a journey. It might have been a slightly different path, but yes, I would, because it's something that I love that I've been able to go to so many different places for, as part of my job. I love that I've been able to learn so much things. I love that every day is different. And there are very few industries where you have that same level of variety and where you're able to create in that way, where you can have something happen in your, in your head, and then you see it all come together. And there are actually, not that many industries where that happens. And that's something I realize is kind of quite important to me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's really good. That's good. So you would do it again, just might have changed a couple paths. That's good to hear.
Yeah, I would change a couple of and different. Yeah, there's certain things I would have episodes I might have skipped past.
Over. Yeah, it all helps.
People I worked with, it's like no,
you're like, I'll skip that one. Fine. Okay.
Fast forward a few bits.
Fair.
Yeah.
So, what's the best and worst advice you've been given?
Gosh, the best advice. Some people have told me just, to keep learning. And that, that's something that I love to do anyway, just to keep learning about keeping your ears and eyes open and just learning all the time. There's, I can't imagine a time when I'm never going to stop learning to see, what's there. I think to keep learning is probably the best advice. And the worst, I probably, my brain just kind of rejects kind of terrible advice generally, but
I like that. Auto rejection.
I rebuke bad advice. But, I'm trying to think of what people have kind of have told me. People kind of tell you to kind of just stay in your lane.
Yeah.
That's people. Yeah, people have kind of said to just kind of stay in your lane. And actually, every time I've done something that has ended up being, for me, it's because actually I haven't stayed in my lane in whatever way, shape, or form. So I've kind of even now with clients, I always say to them, don't just look within your industry. So if you're a travel client or you're a food, whatever, don't just look within your industry. Be looking at other industries, because back to doing the same thing as everybody else.
Yeah.
So yeah, people have told me to kind of stay in my lane. I think that's the worst advice, because I think.
Well, I was going to say the point you made about the worst advice about staying in your lane. That's an important point, because actually, especially with what we do as PR and comms professionals, our skills are transferable. It's about a strategy. So when I really hate when people try and pigeonhole you and just say, oh, well, you're just a beauty PR then, or you're just a so-and-so PR. But it's like, no, actually, these are skills that are transferable. It's about you thinking about it logically. And like you said, it's not always just staying in the same, sector. You've got to look at the cross communications. There's so much more going on. So absolutely. I think that's a valid point.
It is absolutely. I think that it's, I think comm skills are so undervalued.
Yes.
Still, which is crazy to me, because we live in a comms first world. If you look at nearly every single sphere, whether it's government, everything, comms leads first, because of how society is now as well.
Yep.
But the skills that we have, the things that we're able to juggle, like when people go to an event, they just think, they see you, your clipboard or whatever, they don't realize all the different skills that have had to come in play for you to make that event happen. And even when you come up with an idea about it, all the different things have had to kind of come into your mind to come up with that thing. it is, and to be able to like make something simple enough to write about it actually is such an amazing skill that we have. Let's pick up ourselves. That doesn't get recognized at all.
Yeah.
So transferable. So transferable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. And now my final question for you is, do you have any rules that you've implemented to help you along your career journey?
I have various things. So I have things like again, back to trusting my gut instincts, which it's hard, it's kind of hard to quantify that, but I always trust my gut instincts. And it has never ever led me wrong. Even whether it's people I'm working with or clients, whatever, trust in that.
Yeah.
And then not a rule, but also I'm very conscious about clients I work with as well, because with a client, I don't just work with anybody. I always want to see that we're aligned. My vision and their vision are aligned, because I take my work actually quite personally when I think about it. So I have to care about what I'm doing. If I don't care about whatever it is the client is genuinely, it's never going to work. I mean, I will always want to do my absolute best work for my clients, but I need to also feel that it's in alignment with the things I believe in. And, I've talked about authenticity and sustainability and all those things. So any client I work with has to be in alignment with my perspective on the world, I suppose. And it's not always going to be 100% alignment, because there's no human being on this world that actually believe in absolutely 100% of what they say. My best friend loves raisins and I hate raisins. So, but as long as overall there's that alignment, I think it's really, really important. And I guess what else is there? Yeah, clients who want you to do things that just don't make any sense at all. Being able to explain to a client why certain things, don't. Knowing that sometimes you're going to have to say things to clients that they're not always going to want to hear, basically, and being able to have a strategy for dealing with that. And there are times that you're going to lose that battle as a reality, because within comms, you don't always win.
The battle. I always win the battles. I know, because sometimes they will still override you, but I always say, well, rest in assurance that you said what was right and you gave the correct advice.
Absolutely. And sometimes I always think of it's a bit like when you're hard ground, when you water it, sometimes you have to keep watering it. The earth is hard, and it's going to take like a third or fourth or fifth time of you before it softens, before they get it. So I never think it's in vain. If a client ends up not doing the thing I've said, I always have faith that I know what I'm talking about, and eventually they're going to see that. If it's not from me, it's going to be, eventually they'll see why they should have.
Yeah, I get it. Well, that's really been great. Thank you, Lynda. I've really enjoyed chatting with you today. Thank you for sharing your journey with us. I think it's been really interesting. And obviously, if anyone wants to contact you, can you let them know where they can find you?
Yeah, sure. Head to Instagram, wonderpr.lynda. Is probably the best way to find me. And then you can find, the rest of my LinkedIn, all that. But if you go to wonderpr.lynda, Lynda with a Y.
Okay, there you go. Well, you can all hit up Lynda there. So Lynda, a big thank you to you for sharing with us. So
it's great talking to you.
No, it's been wonderful talking to you as well. So it's Lynda Daboh, and she is from Wonder Communications. So thanks again. I will be back again very soon with some more wonderful people from the world of comms. Until then, bye-bye for now, and thanks for listening.